Oh, one second. Oh, sleepy puppy. I've spent all weekend building this guy a fence. He has no concept of what we're doing, why we're doing it. All he knows is that he is so sad because all of his humans have been outside all weekend and he's been allowed to watch us. So anyway, long story short, video was supposed to go up Saturday, completely got derailed in favor of fence building mode. But I'm here and I am ready to talk about some spooktacular books. So picture this. You are at the library, at the bookstore, surfing online, what have you. And you see this cover and you're like, that looks like a good spooky book. Does this spooky cover mean that there's a good book underneath it? I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked and I'm here to answer. Alright, so I have about 10-ish spooky books for you today. And they're ones that I have read within like the last 5 or 10 years. And I'm letting you know whether or not I think it's worth it or whether you should kick it to the curb. Let's get started. And the first book we have is We Have Always Lived in This Castle. And this is an older one. It was published 1980s or so. And this is one of those books that I saw the cover and I was like, I need to read this. This book focuses on Mary Catherine, aka Mary Cat. She is, I don't know if we could qualify her as a witch, but she does all kinds of magical things and she's always doing these rituals to keep her family safe. Her family being her older sister Constance and her uncle Julian. There was some event in the somewhat recent past that caused the family to just die. They live in a small town and there's rumors abound about whether or not classified as murder, who do you think murdered who, etc., etc. Now, they have a cousin come to town. Let's just say Mary Cat does not like to share her remaining family, and she will find a way that she wouldn't have to. This book, stunning. Is it the scariest book I've ever read? No. But did I love it? Yes. The atmosphere, the characters, the interpersonal conflicts, all of this just culminated in this gorgeous, gorgeous book. I would say totally worth it. We are going to hit another classic. I'm talking Coraline. Now, Coraline is like a quintessential coming-of-age novel. It's gorgeous, and it terrified me so much as a child that I literally only read it last year. So the concept of Coraline is you follow the main character, Coraline. She and her family have moved to a new house, and it's a rainy day. She is trying to find something to do, and her parents are too busy to hang out with her. Her mother told her to go count doors, and Coraline finds this door that when she opens it and she goes through, brings her to the other world. The other world is gorgeous. It is wonderful. She has a doting mother, a caring father. There's just one problem. The other father and the other mother don't want to let her go. Reading it as an adult, and I do fully acknowledge that this book was meant for kids, I thought it was wonderful. Like, it had that edge of scariness where your heart is kind of racing a bit. It is fun and it is clever. But all in all, I would say Coraline, totally worth it. My Sister, the Serial Killer. So this one, I guess like the best way to describe it is the title. So in this one, our main character, she is a nurse. She kind of sort of likes this guy at work, and then she finds out her sister likes the guy, and she is freaking out because her sister kind of sort of accidentally murders every boyfriend she's ever had. I feel like I picked this one up and then put it down like about half a dozen times before I actually finished it. And I know everyone on Goodreads was like loving it, but I think what really just kind of threw me out is I loved the concept of this book. The concept was amazing, But the main character in this one, when she finds out her sister is a many times over murderer, and honestly all of the help she gives her sister, I don't know, like it just kind of took me out of the book. I was just wanted her to have a bit more of a spine, a bit more of a backbone, and the ending kind of fizzled for me. I wanted it to be more. So to me personally, I would say this one was not worth it. Just skip it. Speaking of serial killers, what about real life ones? So this is a real life book. Can you tell I'm exhausted? This is a real life serial killer. It's known as the Golden State Killer. And for many, many years across Northern California, there were these women being raped, and then later on they were being raped and murdered. And it was definitely the work of a serial killer. No one could figure out who it was, and after a time they just went away. And the police interest kind of dimmed, but the author of this one, Michelle McNamara, she never stopped looking. This book just chronicles her search and also chronicles the serial killer's development. Now for this book, it was probably one of my very first true crime books, and I liked it. It was very well written and it was very well researched. Spook factor, which really says something when the real life killers don't give me anything spooky, but it was a very compelling read. So I would say worth it. Wrapping up part of our serial killer section here is Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered. This book is written by Karen and Georgia, and they are true crime podcasters. They have a really large following from what I can tell, and they just talk very respectfully but about true crimes. Personally, it didn't really fit the title as much as I thought it would. I came into this book with absolutely no knowledge of these two women, and everything I have is pieced together from that single book experience. I thought this book was actually going to be like a how-to guide and how to not get murdered. And they do address that, but a lot more of the book is actually kind of a biography, going into their lives, talking about how they got interested, and then some tidbits here and there about serial killers. Not as much as I hoped, and I feel like this is one of those books that if you are a fan of these two women, it will hit a lot different than someone like me who's coming into it completely blind. For me, it was kind of a take it or leave it. Like, it was an okay read, but I ended up feeling like there's just a lot that I just didn't get because I wasn't very well versed in them to begin with. The Bird Box. Follow a mother and two children called Boy and Girl. So in the past, we find out a little bit about what caused the apocalypse. There are these things that are outside the house, and if you look at them, you go crazy and try and kill people. Then in the present, the mother and then girl and boy are trying to get out of the house that they've been in for the last 5 or so years to get to a safe zone. So for this book on a whole, I really liked it. It didn't have that crazy spooky factor, but it did have that feeling where you're like kind of on edge. Your hair is rising a bit as you learn more and more about like the creatures and the life, and the tension gets to you. Honestly, I would say it's worth it. Down a Dark Hall. We follow a teenage girl. She is being forced to go to a boarding school. At first, she was okay with the idea of going to this boarding school, but when she gets there, she realizes that there's 3 other students, only 2 teachers, and someone who's supposed to cook for them but isn't allowed to talk to any of the students. So of course our main character gets super suspicious, and there's all these little creepy happenings, these little things that are setting off warning bells, but she doesn't listen in time. So for this book, I wanted it to be spookier than it was. I feel like the spookiness to this book was very telegraphed, and there was so many moments where it could have like really hit up to that creep factor, up to the scariness, and it just didn't go for it. Well, personally, I would say skip Down a Dark Hall go for Coraline instead. My Lovely Wife. In this book, our main character, he is married to this gorgeous, wonderful wife, and she just so happens to like to murder, and he decided to give it a try, and one thing led to another. Now they're planning their special anniversary with a certain special victim. The husband can't tell if the wife is good or bad. Well, obviously she's kind of bad, but he can't tell if she's on his side or against him. And he is trying to track her, but she's always a few steps ahead of him. And it's a bit of a cat and mouse thing with murder on the side. Honestly, this one was okay for me. If I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I could have skipped it, but I was really curious about the hype surrounding this one, so I picked it up anyway. The Chain. So we all remember getting those chain letters. Well, actually, for me, it was more so chain emails. For this, the next 10 people, otherwise you're going to die at midnight with a frog in your mouth. Those sort of things. So this play takes this concept and scales it up to people. AKA, your child is missing. You have 2 days to give us this money and kidnap another child, and only that way yours will be returned to you. I thought this was a really interesting concept, and it worked really well for the first, I would say, quarter of the book, maybe even up to the half of the book. But then it just started fizzling. It just got really convoluted, and it got really into the, is this real? Is this fake? What is gonna happen? And the tension just kept trying to build, and I was like, I am exhausted from this book already. Personally, I would just say skip it. And the last one I have is going to be a little bit of an older one as well, and it's also another middle grade one. I think I need to actively seek out more spooky books because I keep returning to the younger age group, but at the same time, a good book is a good book no matter the age group. This one I'm talking about is Dull Bones, and it's written by Holly Black. So this book focuses on 3 best friends, Zachary, Alice, and Poppy. And they've been best friends for the longest time, except for most recently, Zach has said that he no longer wants to hang out with these girls or play with him. And that's partly because of his dad just really picking on him for having toys and doing childish things. So they kind of break up. Poppy and Alice visit Zachary one last time asking for his help. Poppy is being haunted by a China bone doll. It is a doll that the girls think is made up from the ground bones of a murdered girl, and they have to lay the China bone doll to rest. Zachary agrees to come with them, and at first he thinks that they're just making things up so that he will hang out with them again, but then he starts to notice the doll and what the doll does. This book is really great at balancing you on the edge of is this real or is this not? I really enjoyed it. It has a great atmosphere, and I feel like I keep saying that, but that's what I really look for when I'm looking for a spooky or a Halloween-y read. I love the atmosphere, the characters, the way they played off each other. It was pretty good. There were a few times where they argued a little bit too much, and I was like, whew, kids, calm down here. But other than that, I thought it was a really excellent read, and it was fun. Alright, so there we go. That is my worth it or skip it for Halloween-y, spooky-ish reads. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading. Bye!